this is William and Mom. I guess you guys call her Michelle, or Dad calls her the Homestead Honey, which is just awkward for me to say. Today we're going to be planting in the orchard and down the driveway into the food forest. Now, Mom started all these seeds in the greenhouse, and I think we just did an update on Patreon just to show you everything she had going on in the greenhouse. So, what are we planting here, Mom?
So today we've got a bunch of different varieties of tomatoes. We've also got marigolds, a bunch of different kinds of basil, thyme.
So what all is getting planted right in this spot right here?
Right here we're planting tomatoes, and we're also going to plant some marigolds on the outside, and they just help keep deter pests, and they also attract the beneficial bugs. And then we're going to plant a bunch of different kinds of basil. We've got lemon basil, purple basil, and the basil helps improve the tomato flavor.
And why are you putting the marigolds around the outside edge instead of in between the tomato plants?
I think the tomato plants do better when they have good airflow and they're spaced a couple feet apart. We've planted in between tomato plants before, and it just gets to be a big jumbled chaotic mess. So I think this year I want to just stick to planting the herbs and the marigolds on the outside, and then just have tomatoes spaced far enough apart that there's good airflow, and that way you don't get we get a lot of rain, and we also have like humidity with that rain. So I think it will be better for them, reduce the blight and the mildew if we can keep that good spacing and airflow.
All right, so I guess we'll go ahead and put these in the ground, and then we'll move on to the next section.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get our tomatoes planted. And when you take them out of the pot, you want to be careful that you don't, these ones aren't too big of a deal because they're bigger, but we've got some smaller ones. So just kind of squeeze the bottom to get it loose, and then pull from the base there. That way you don't damage the plant too much. And our spacing, we're leaving like about 3 feet on the edges so that we can plant some marigolds and basil. And then I think we're gonna put a plant here, and then do a couple feet in between them. So I'm just gonna dig a hole. All right, and I'm gonna take the bottom few leaves off, put a little bit of soil down in there, and plant the tomato. There's quite a bit, we have a pretty thick layer of mulch here, so I want to add some soil just to give it a medium to grow in, because this mulch layer is pretty thick. So I'm just adding some soil, and then I'm gonna put the mulch back in place. So we're gonna let these grow a little bit, and then we'll come back in and add some stakes and tie them to the stakes for support. And then after we get these all planted, we'll come back and we'll water them in.
All right, so we got all the tomatoes and the marigolds and basil and borage planted. And tell them what the borage does. What is that good for?
The borage repels tomato worms. And it's also good for bees, butterflies. The bees really love that, I don't know how you say it, borage. So that's why we planted it.
We've got a bee flying around my head right now. We just did some bee work yesterday and I think they're still irritated about it.
Yeah,
so
they are.
So we dug the holes for the tomatoes and we noticed that there was still quite a bit of moisture down in there. And I think the last rain event we had was a couple of days ago, but it was really light. Yeah, it was really light. And then before that, it's been a couple of weeks. So these methods work. And we're also seeing an improvement in the soil. And for people that are new to this type of planting in an orchard, a lot of plants can occupy the same space, kind of like what we have up in the raised beds where we have the beets planted with, what was it? Broccoli, I think,
yeah.
So the beets are growing underground and the broccoli is growing above ground. Broccoli has root systems and stuff like that, but largely they're not interfering with each other, which is kind of what we're mimicking here. There's a lot of space in between these trees that isn't really doing a whole lot. We have the support species immediately around the trees, but then we have this empty space in between the guilds that we might as well plant with annuals. So this is sort of a syntropic system. So the tomatoes and stuff are planted, and now what's the next step?
Now we have some summer squash we need to get in the ground, and we also have some Italian zucchini that we're gonna plant.
What makes it Italian? Why is it Italian? How's Italian zucchini different than zucchini?
It's an Italian variety.
Okay.
It's called Cocazelle zucchini. It's just an Italian variety. So
okay.
I try to plant as much Italian and French varieties as I can, because a lot of times they taste better because they bred for taste, whereas in the United States we breed for whatever's going to last long in the shipping and selling process. So a lot of the Italian and the French varieties will taste a whole lot better than what we can get here.
Cool. So we're gonna plant. What's the spacing on these? 24 to 31 inches?
Right.
Okay, so we can only fit a couple right here, and it's gonna spread out and act as a ground cover. And the rest we're gonna plant down in the
food forest.
Down in the food forest, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But you'll see what we're gonna do down there. All right, so let's plant. So we got the zucchini and summer squash, the Italian zucchini and summer squash planted and then watered. And now we're going to do sunflowers and cucumbers. Now these what kind of cucumbers are these?
These are striped cucumbers. They're not the pickling kind. They're the eating kind, and they're the long, and they have very few seeds. So they're the best. I think they're the best eating kind. They have really thin skin too.
So we're gonna have a row of sunflowers and then 2 cucumber plants because they're gonna kind of spread out. And then we have a blueberry right here, so we have to be aware of that. And then sunflowers and then cucumber and then sunflowers. So the cucumbers are gonna occupy a different space than the sunflowers. So this is where you can look at the spacing on the seed packets and that app you use, Gardenate.
Yeah, Gardenate app has a lot of good information in it too.
But when you're doing things, you're not doing things the conventional way. So you can kind of adjust the spacing a little bit depending on what you're growing.
So Michigan Gardener, he has a YouTube channel, it's MI Gardener, and he explained seed packet spacing. And the way I understand it is when a seed packet says 12-inch spacing, what that means is that 6 inches on one side of the plant, 6 inches on the other side of the plant. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have a plant and it has to be a foot away from your other plant. It's the distance around the plant is what it's referring to.
So it's going to spread out equally on
Right.
on all sides.
Right.
6 inches. So the diameter would be 12 inches and the radius would be 6 inches.
Right.
I think they need to do a better job on these seed packets. All right, so we're gonna get these planted and then I think it's down to the food forest, right?
Yep.
All right. All right, so if you hear any background noise, there's a helicopter flying over right now, but we're in the food forest now. So the camera is actually standing in the potato beds, I guess the potato rows. And now we're on the edge of the food forest where there's some empty space. And we're gonna be planting some more zucchini.
Yep, we're just gonna fill in the space with whatever plants we had left over from up the hill. So we've got some more zucchini and we're just gonna get that planted.
And there isn't much thought into like this particular location. It's just an empty space and we're gonna fill it with zucchini. So that's one cool thing about a food forest is if there's empty space and it's not gonna harm anything else, just fill it with whatever you wanna eat. The zucchini's planted and we just went to the other side of the tree that's right there. This is the food forest. And now we're going to be planting the
Cherokee tan pumpkins, which we got the seeds from Deep South Homestead.
So shout out to Deep South Homestead. If you haven't already checked them out, go ahead and go check them out.
And they are a smaller pumpkin, kind of like enough for 2 people. So this is the first time we've grown them, so we're gonna try them out.
Cool. All right, so we got that stuff planted over off to the side, and then we did along this back edge, this edge, and then this back edge, we planted a bunch of acorn squash and watermelon, and that'll act as a good edge protection from weeds trying to penetrate into the food forest and stuff like that, because it's a big, long ground cover.
And there's pumpkin also.
And pumpkin also. So now we're gonna try something that I don't think we've ever done before. We're gonna try planting corn and bush beans in the food forest. Now, the way it's kind of set up is that we have some of these block, like long rectangles of just kind of empty space. So we're gonna dig out some shallow trenches, plant these corn. We have 4 different types of corn. We have Bloody Butcher, Hopi.
You might want to explore. It's you can either eat it fresh or you can use it, like grind it for cornmeal.
But it's red, so they call it Bloody Butcher. There's Hopi Blue Dent, which is for cornmeal. There's corn Painted Mountain. That's a cornmeal or a sweet corn.
Yeah.
And then there's the Early Sun Glow Hybrid, which we're gonna try that out. And then in between the blocks of corn, we're gonna plant these bush beans because corn is a heavy feeder and beans are legumes, so they're nitrogen fixers. So we're gonna try to replenish some of the nitrogen that the corn is gonna rob from the soil. And we're gonna do the Cherokee Wax and the Royal Burgundy bush beans. The reason we're doing bush beans is because if we did like pole beans.
You'd need a trellis, and we
Yeah.
don't want to do a trellis in this area because we're doing it in other places too. So we're just doing bush beans in this area.
Right, so we're gonna do blocks of corn. We're gonna dig out a trench and then lightly put some soil over the top of it. I think they need to be an inch deep. And then we're gonna do, so after the blocks of corn, we're gonna do a few rows of bush beans in between the blocks. Ready?
Yep.
All right, so we got 2 blocks of corn done. The first block was the Bloody Butcher, which is a red corn. And the second block was the
Blue dent corn.
Yeah, the Hopi blue dent corn.
Right.
Right. And then in between these 2 blocks, we have bush beans. And those are, again, nitrogen fixers. And the corn is a heavy feeder. So we're replacing some of that fertility using bush beans. We're going to repeat this process going down the food forest, but just to save time on this video so it's not 45 minutes of us planting, we'll spare you the details on that. So all we did here was we pulled back some of the mulch, laid down a thin layer of soil, put the seeds in, and then put soil over the top of that.
If you just pull the mulch back just a little bit, you run into like the moisture.
I'll show you. It's like right before you get to the cardboard. It's like, I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, it's all wet. And we haven't been out here watering or anything like that. We just added cardboard and thick mulch. Like, do you think we'll have to water anything?
Other than like when we first plant it, we make sure it's watered in good. And then if we go for a significant period of time without rain, then we water. But otherwise, we don't water a whole lot because, yeah, I think this mulch really helps to retain the moisture.
Right. So this is William, the pasture raised pimp, and Mom. She just goes by Mom. Where pimp stands for permaculture is my passion. Hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.